Let's bring in Ben Domenech, publisher of the Federalist. He is in Washington. So, Ben, we heard some talk there of secret tapes allegedly in the White House since the president tweeted about the possible existence of such tapes. Now, he won't talk about it. And Sean Spicer said, quote, "The tweet speaks for itself." But like some tweets in the past, there are just more questions. Do you think that the White House needs to provide some clarity on this issue, Ben?
Well, I think like so many other things related to this White House, there's a real lack of clarity that the president himself seems to enjoy. Who knows whether this was something that he said in an aspect of trolling James Comey, who clearly had been going out and talking behind the scenes after his dismissal as FBI director. But I want to go back to one of the comments that I think was made in that you heard throughout all of the different segments you just played there, which is that the next FBI director ought to be someone who is apolitical, who is respected by both sides. I think whoever Trump names this week is really important to take away from this entire process. Does he name someone who can be fairly characterized as being a stooge or someone who will get rid of this ongoing investigation? Obviously, Acting Director McCabe gave testimony this past week that he said he didn't think that the White House had obstructed the investigation in any way. Does that continue? And I think this is a real critical moment for the Trump presidency in the early going. This is one of his chaotic steps, one of the things that he's done that has really riled up a lot of people, across the different partisan landscape in Washington. Does he name someone who can be respected by both sides, who is going to be viewed as someone who can truly be independent and will continue the various investigations that are going on, whether counterintelligence or otherwise, to their conclusion?
And Ben, what is your sense of how the White House is handling the search for a new FBI director? And specifically, what do you think about some of the names being considered? Well,
I think there's a number of very qualified names there. Obviously, you have a couple of them, though, with partisan backgrounds. Mike Rogers ran a bipartisan committee in the House on intelligence for many years and was actually backed by a lot of different FBI officials the last time that this was under consideration. John Cornyn is, of course, the Republican majority whip in the Senate and someone who has a background in law enforcement as Attorney General from Texas. But then you also see members of the judiciary. You see the potential for perhaps hiring someone from within the FBI, as Senator Graham just said. Again, I think it's going to be critical that they name someone very solid for this position, because in the wake of this Comey firing, there's so much distrust among a lot of different factions, not just within the Democratic Party for the president, that I think he needs to establish that this is going to be a quality pick. We've seen him do that before when it came to General Mattis, when it came to Secretary Kelly and others who are within his cabinet. He needs to really nail this one.
Well, Ben, the Comey firing put the spotlight on the White House communications team. We saw Sarah Huckabee Sanders fill in for Press Secretary Sean Spicer this past week. And now there are perhaps rumblings, I guess, that he could be on the outs. What are you hearing?
You know, I'm hearing a lot of different things when it comes to the president's attitude towards his communications shop. I will just say that as someone who is familiar with this type of work, the president doesn't do his communications shop any favors when he pushes forward with significant decisions without giving them any kind of lead time to get their ducks in a row and say clearly, what the story is, have a clear line that they're giving out when it comes to the media. You saw him, just this week really undermine them in a lot of senses. And the truth is there are a number of surrogates out there for the president outside of the White House who arguably might do a better job in those positions than the staff that he currently has there. I do think that he has soured a bit on Sean Spicer and his fairly aggressive approach to dealing with the media. You saw, for instance, his teasing of the idea that they could be getting rid of the White House briefing entirely. It has become a bit of a sideshow in recent years. In fact, a few years ago under President Obama, there was talk at that time that they might be getting rid of it as well, or curtailing it to some degree. But it is an important aspect of the ability of people to be able to ask questions of the White House. You just need someone who is able to deal with that kind of barrage of questions in a smooth fashion. I think that the president very well might be making a move here in the next several weeks if he continues to sour on the approach that Sean Spicer has had.
Just to go back to something you mentioned a moment ago, how serious do you think this suggestion is? The president in this interview with Fox News suggesting that they would do away with these regular White House press briefings. I mean, is this another trial balloon that's sort of being floated, or is this perhaps, you think, I suppose there's no way to know for sure, but is this actually something that is under serious consideration at this point?
Well, I'll tell you that this was a trial balloon that they actually floated a little more quietly before he even took office. The idea that they would curtail these briefing sessions, that they would shorten them up or make them happen only every couple of days, as opposed to a different the approach that we have today. Of course, the problem is you can't predict which days something chaotic is going to happen around the world that deserves a response from the White House. I think at this stage it's still a trial balloon, but it's also kind of an indication, as so many things are from the president, where he'll throw something out there to indicate, hey, I'm willing to break this norm. I'm willing to trash this idea of something that you've gotten used to as being the general way that we do things in Washington. And I think that this is just one more aspect of that.
Yeah, it's a really good point you bring up, Ben, that these are not just for domestic consumption, but in fact, world leaders look at what happens in those briefing rooms to try to divine what U.S. policy towards a particular country may be. So against the backdrop of all of this happening in Washington, the president is preparing for his first overseas trip. He's going to travel to Saudi Arabia and Israel. Why do you think this is his first trip? What is the message being sent there, and what can we expect?
I think that this is going to be a trip that's going to really establish what we expect from the president when he goes overseas. We haven't seen him do this before. It's going to be the first time that he's going to be, crossing over and meeting with a lot of different allies. And I think that this is one of those tests of how does the president behave when he's in these different circumstances? Does the tweeting stop? Does he, approach how do our allies respond to the approach that he uses when he's face to face with them and they're not trying to interpret tea leaves from across the way? We've seen him actually have a situation where once he gets to know someone in person, for instance, when he had his first China-centric meeting, he changed a lot of the ways that he talked about the nation after that fact. We'll see if that's the same when it comes to the different interactions that he has overseas. This is the first real test for him when it comes to how he's going to be able to interact with our allies going forward, which is obviously a critical aspect of the presidency.
All right, a lot to watch. Ben Domenech, thank you so much, Ben. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you.